Late last month, we spoke with Representative Dan Newhouse about a meeting held in Okanagan County to discuss the proposed plan to bring grizzly bears back to the North Cascades. Newhouse reiterated his opposition to the plan and says most people in Washington state oppose it too. But since then, Apple Valley News Now's Emily Goodell has been contacted by several supporters of the plan who say it's a lot more complicated than that.
At the end of last month, Representative Dan Newhouse told me that out of the approximately 200 people who met in Okanagan County on October 30th to discuss the plan to get grizzly bears back in the North Cascades, most were against it.
Obviously, not every single person had time to speak. Our rough tally of the speakers that did express their opinion, there was almost 50 people opposed and maybe only about 6 people spoke in favor.
But supporters who were there, including Jasmine Mimbashian, reached out to me saying that's because they weren't comfortable speaking up.
I think people's fears were stoked, specifically by our elected representatives. What I saw at that meeting was just people shouting each other down and booing and a lot of disrespect.
Mimbashian is the director of the Methow Valley Citizens Council, which has about 1,000 members across Okanagan County, which is in Newhouse's district, and many of them support the plan.
The way he frames it is that everyone in his district opposes grizzly bear recovery, and that's just simply not true. Just at the Winthrop meeting alone, at least half the people there voiced their support.
Some of the supporters have taken issue with statements made by Representative Newhouse, saying they're misleading. Newhouse has said grizzly bears are over 20 times as dangerous as black bears, citing a website dedicated to black bears in Minnesota. But comparing statistics from Yellowstone National Park about the risk of bear attacks for campers in backcountry, with a population of 1,000 grizzly bears, the risk of a grizzly bear attack is about 1 in 1.7 million overnight stays. In comparison, the population lower for black bears at 500 to 600, and the risk of a black bear attack is 1 in 850,000 overnight stays. Newhouse also told me last month,
Fish and Wildlife and Parks plan is eventually to allow grizzly bears to cover more than just this area, but other areas throughout the state. These bears have the ability to migrate within a 500-mile radius, and so by placing them up in the north central part of the state, they could easily end up in Kittitas or even Yakima County.
But the proposal calls for a small amount of bears released in remote areas and a management plan to make sure they stay where they're supposed to.
For example, if a bear went down into an orchard, the federal agencies would have more tools at their disposal to deal with that bear, including moving the bear out of the area or hazing it.
Whatever happens with the plan in the end, supporters are hoping the discussion can be more respectful moving forward.
It's easy to be heard when you're loud and intimidating, but there are a lot of people who are watching carefully and are quietly supporting in the background. And unfortunately, those folks are not as visible, but they're just as important.
The public comment period closed Monday, and the National Park Service and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are taking those comments into consideration. In Washington, Emily Goodell, Apple Valley News Now.
In the past 24 hours, Goodell has reached out to Representative Newhouse's office for comment several times, but hasn't been able to get him on the phone. She will continue to try to follow up with him about what the supporters had to say.